What's happening, guys? This is Wilson from the Guided Missile. I've got a new episode of Under the Rubble for you. This is our film study series. You can think of it as a post-game show. Late last week, I posted a video on Grand Bazaar where I was pitching some ideas for a new series, and P-Dub and I talked about it a little bit. He actually came up with the title for this, and it's kind of stuck. So I went back and I renamed that video from late last week, Under the Rubble Grand Bazaar Episode 1, and this will be Episode 2. I grabbed this particular game because of an encounter that P-Dub described to me later in the week that I was not present for. And he was very frustrated because we've had a few run-ins with a particular clan on the PlayStation Network that is sponsored by a certain YouTube channel, and I'll just leave it at that. We don't really seem to get along with these guys. The encounters that we've had, we've clashed. When we have run up against this group, typically the entire enemy team will belong to the same clan, and they're all using team chat, and they're very organized, and it's difficult to face an entire team that's organized as a single unit when there's only a squad of you and your friends present, anywhere from 2 to 6 players, and the rest of the team is comprised of a lot of guys that are quote-unquote randoms, and I hate to use that term because everyone's contribution is important, and there are a lot of great players out there, and I've met good friends randomly. But how do you approach a game when the odds are definitely stacked against you, and you can't account for the actions of a lot of the members of your own team, and they seem to kind of be doing their own thing? So I wanted to take a look back at this game because 4 of us found ourselves in a server where we were usually outnumbered. The enemy team was working well together, and the rest of our team wasn't contributing a whole lot. We had taken a couple losses in a row, and rather than back out, wanted to give it one big effort to try to win this game, which ended up being a loss anyway. So let's see what we might have done differently. Coming up is a decent defensive C and an attempt to push toward B, where we were all working pretty well together, so let's listen to the live chat in this section for a minute.
Good to go.
Give some of that rocket to the face.
Alright, thank you. Alright, is there any enemy armor out there?
I just got shot down on C. There's a guy at the wall with an M16. He's behind the flaming Vodnik. Another one just spawned on him. They're on the railroad tracks running toward the building on the far left of C. I'm going to jump in here because I'm honestly baffled by some of my decisions at this point. I'm hammering away on the gun in the LAV, which is obviously completely useless, and also typically a bad idea when there are no targets present because it gives away the position of the armor. I didn't see the infantry clearly marked on the mini-map, although I am fortunate to pick that guy off. Toro had a little bad luck getting the LAV hung up on something, but now watch this. That is just embarrassing. I'm not sure what I was thinking there exactly. I guess I expected our LAV to already be gone and for the Amtrak to be in that position, but instead I fire on our own armor, waste a rocket, and get myself up. With better awareness, I could have gone around that building, flanked the enemy armor, and maybe put a couple rockets on, or maybe just created enough of a distraction to protect the LAV. This is definitely a case of the enemy team always seeming to be one step ahead of us. That LAV could have made a huge difference in the game, but they already had a counter in place. Remember that Toro did ask the question, is there any armor out there? So he was already thinking ahead, which is awesome. But I didn't have the wherewithal to really listen and try to understand why he was asking the question. I was more focused on describing what I saw on my kill cam. If you go back and look, the enemy armor was marked on my map during the respawn period, and I should have called that out instead. When I spawned in, I definitely should have recognized what was happening. This next sequence is probably the highlight of the game, and we did have a slight opportunity here to get things back under control, so I'm going to go back to the live chat here for a second. Yeah, I see him. Nice. Good job, guys.
Oh, we got more. They're gonna spawn on him. That was good work right there. Alright, there's one guy just chilling out on
far left.
Bravo.
Far left, he's running around the road.
Behind us, behind us. Watch your back, Will.
Yep.
Wilson.
I feel like the enemy team must have done a good job communicating that we had made some progress and that we were moving toward B, because we encountered a force coming from that direction and another retreating from C, which just highlights the huge advantage of communication. No matter how good you are, it's almost impossible to defeat sheer numbers and the radio. That's why you can't outrun the police. They have good radios and they use them. But even if you aren't the best at personal combat, you can really affect the outcome of any game by just keeping your wits about you and using the comm. Case in point right there. I'm just not so hot at the personal combat. I suspect that a downed opponent probably coordinated the effort and prevented us from going on to take B, which in my estimation was a huge factor in them winning this game. So even in death, that particular opponent created a positive ticket difference for his team by causing at least 3 actual kills and maintaining the ticket burn from the standpoint of having an objective advantage. I've touched on this a little bit before, but I think it's important to know your limitations and understand your role. I'm not the best at personal combat. Since I started recording my gameplay and doing these videos, I have to admit I've kind of fallen into the trap of chasing personal glory so that I would have the occasional highlights to feature in a montage. But that's never really been my forte. There are guys in my group like Redfish, P-Dub, and Toro. They're all way better at that aspect of the game than I am. But like everyone, I can get real hot at times, and I do have my moments, but for the most part, I'm just not a 1v1 guy. I'm better served moving incrementally with a plan and supporting my team. Basically, it's just knowing when to pick your spots. Battlefield's an interesting game because there's so many ways to approach it, depending on your skill level or your style of play. I always think of the game as happening on both a micro and a macro scale at the same time. The micro scale would be personal combat and individual achievements, but all those individual choices stack up and definitely have an impact on the outcome of the entire game. That's what I call the macro scale. In the past, that's been an area where I've really been able to help the team, just offering some ideas, providing some sort of narration to the game flow, and I think I've gotten away from that recently. I firmly believe that in almost every game there's a handful of individual choices which directly affect the outcome of the game, and it's important to recognize when those moments are happening and make the best choices possible. It's sort of like in basketball. You've got to maintain contact with the opposing team when they make a run. Like in a basketball game, to have a reasonable chance at winning, you really need to try to keep the deficit under 10. I'd say in a Battlefield Conquest round with a ticket count set at 100%, you've got to try to maintain no more than a 50 to 70 ticket difference to have any realistic hope of recovery. Beyond that, it's just a slippery slope that's almost too steep to climb. If you take a look at the ticket count at this point, we've reached that critical juncture that I'm talking about. So the decisions made right now will be the most important choices of the entire game. If we don't get it right, we're probably not going to win. And if you are hearing my live chat in the game, you can sense that I'm already beginning to lose the plot a little bit and that I'm becoming really frustrated. With an 80 ticket deficit, my decision here to become fixated on shooting down this helicopter is pretty much the final nail in the coffin for us. The helicopter, although it's a constant nuisance, is not capturing any flags. Notice that throughout this entire game, there's hardly been a blue friendly in sight. And that's as much our fault as it is theirs. Our squad spent most of the match moving between C and B, so it stands to reason that the rest of our team is either at A or attempting to move from the deployment towards A. Abandoning the pursuit of this helicopter kill and moving through the warehouses and support the rest of the team on A would have been a better choice. But as you can see right here, I've become so intent on scoring a hit with my rockets that I'm totally oblivious to the threats on the ground. While I'm just trying to get even, I've lost sight of the big picture, and while I'm trying to quote-unquote settle to score, most of the time that's never going to work. If I had shot down this helicopter, it wouldn't have affected the outcome of the game. And if my aim is in fact to win the game, then this, in the counseling profession, is what we call a suboptimal choice. And so, right there, I gave up a very easy kill at a time in the game when I should be making the enemy work much harder for every single ticket. I should have made a choice with the big picture goal of winning the game in mind. Although it's real easy to get frustrated and get sucked into that get-even trap. Making that choice usually results in the creation of a negative feedback loop, though, that's almost always going to end badly. Like that right there. Coincidentally, this is exactly the type of play that sparked off the whole rivalry between ourselves and the clan I referenced at the beginning of the video. We randomly ended up on the same team with some of these guys and lost a close game on Wake Island. I had a really bad KD that game because I spent a lot of the game trying to get even with an awesome F-35 pilot. This particular dude was just raping our airbase, and so I took it upon myself to shoot him down. Long story short, he won. I did not shoot him down. And judging from the scoreboard, I ended up looking like the jackass that cost us the game, which is possible. Maybe I did. At the time, I thought I was helping, but I also thought it was pretty funny. I'm not going to lie, I was probably drinking. My judgment was most likely impaired. Meanwhile, however, this team killer from Clan X, he's just trolling around farming kills with a tank, expecting everyone else to cap flags. And at the end of the game when we lost, he gets all upset and decides to send me a PM, and then actually goes to the trouble to join my squad just to hurl some obscenities my way. And before anyone can respond back to this guy, he backs out of the server. Classy, right? So when I go to check my battle log, I figure out who this guy is, and I send him a few colorful messages of my own. Equally classy, I know. Definitely not one of my finer moments. But, I don't know, here's the deal. There's no accounting for what other people do or don't do or how they choose to play the game. You can only control your own choices. As Sevens likes to say, I paid my money just like y'all did, so I'll play the game however I want. And if the style of play on a particular server genuinely bothers you, your best move is probably to back out. Now bear in mind that in order to complete certain achievements or earn some unlocks, it's sometimes necessary to play like a jackass, EOD bot kill. I try my best to do those things during a time when the rest of my clan isn't around so my poor gameplay doesn't bring everyone else down. But unfortunately that means another team is going to suffer. Like right now I'm trying to complete the L96 assignment and get all those kills, which is not super helpful to the team. It's hard to know. Some people just like to snipe, some people just want to goof off. So the question was posed to me by the leader of Clan X after the smoke cleared a little bit. He asked me, if you don't care, then why don't you just go play on an unranked server then? Really? I mean, who does that? Is it really that serious, dude? I mean, from my perspective, no, it's not that serious. It is just a game, and it's supposed to be fun. And sometimes I enjoy being competitive, which is why I bought a capture card and review my gameplay like this. But sometimes I just want to try stupid stuff and drink and hang out with my buddies online. So if you're into a mood to be competitive and the rest of the team isn't really into it, it's probably time for you to move on. But if you want to stay in that server and try to win, the best thing to do is to put your team chat on and try to lead by example. Provide some useful feedback, call things out, spot people, tell everyone what's going on around you and what you expect to happen. Go to where the rest of the team is and help them clear out an area, and they're likely to follow you and your buddies when you move out. And that's how you gather an army and get followers. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to follow anybody who berates me over the internet. So having said all that, what should we have done in this game? Operating from the Russian deployment, the best strategy is probably to hold C and A rather than B, and to utilize the advantage of the Russian side, which is the armor. And I feel like as a group, that's an area where we could all improve a little bit. We just don't have any tank champions in our clan. And if I had this to do over again, I would have liked to have tried a couple of things. First, I'd suggest that Silk spawn at the deployment, grab a tank, and move toward A, because in my opinion, he's the most efficient tank driver in our group. P-Dub was already running engineer, so I'd probably suggest that he support the tank with a javelin and torch. I might have respawned as recon and placed a SOFLAM behind the C flag in order to threaten the US helicopters. And then after moving up to A, I could have hidden a spawn beacon in that area and attempted to clear infantry with something deadly like a Sega or an M417. You can see P-Dub already had that idea, and he actually did spawn in his recon so that he could place a spawn beacon. But it's all a case of too little too late at this point. Now, during this little portion, I do manage to get a little revenge right at the end of the game with the hijacked Little Bird, but it's pretty meaningless, as you can see. That this one's over and done with. In fact, we probably lost this game before we ever started, but I think we could have made it more competitive if we made a few well-timed choices and also attempted to link up with our blue allies more effectively than we did.
How are they now?
Hopefully you got something out of this. It is helpful for me to go back and look at the gameplay just to get some perspective. I am definitely not a pro. I'm just a guy with a capture card who wants to share videos with friends and put some observations out there. I would appreciate the feedback if you want to let me know what you think. So until next time, this is Wilson reminding you to stay on target.
It wasn't as bad as the last game, but I feel pretty bad.
Yeah, I think Paul was probably right about 4 on 12.
Yeah, that's